we can get a little love to Still Nation.
Hey guys,
Zach says shout out
love this channel.
to Still
Stay
Nation.
tuned.
It's Coffee Talk with sylabdul. Give us a thumbs up and subscribe now.
Wake up in the morning, eyes crusty, heavy yawning. My phone keep going off, so I shut off the alarm and then head into the kitchen to get the coffee brewing. French roast with French vanilla, my own French revolution. Next movement is to tune into Coffee Talk with Sil. My girl starts to yap if I tell her she needs to chill. I hear enough of the yapping from all of these goofy shills. Plus I'm trying to be informed of whatever's the latest deal. For real. I am a FIFA caffeine. Coffee gotta have some cream. Fetch a hazel beef for me while I listen to these kings. Silla might be the team. Subscribe to Sylabdul Inc. Wiki City magazine. Tell me what's behind the scenes, the other side of the ravine. Is it obscene or is it obscure? I am not sure. But the rich is the rich off the poor. That ain't no doubt to my core. We just keep asking for more. They keep supplying demand in the store. As long as it makes it to shore, I know for sure. They'll just keep on making more. Well, almost treasure that piece now have been transformed into corporate Hollywood's whore.
Welcome to the sylabdul Geek Network. This is Coffee Talk. We give informative, objective, and dynamic analysis, the latest in CBM and geek news, and the business behind it. The morning session, so it's Coffee Talk. We got a new article people are using as some kind of proof for whatever argument they want to make regarding Superman. So we're going to cover it today. We're going to hit y'all with a quick one this morning, as we say before we punch the clock on the day job. But the narrative of Superman, I thought we would be getting past this conversation, but Superman is still in theaters. It's on digital now, but it's still something to talk about with the crowd. I see Fernando in the chat. Penny, smash like, make sure you still subscribe. Maria, what's good? We're on X, Twitter as well. If you're on Twitter, definitely comment, share the post. If you are on YouTube, again, smash the like, make sure you still subscribe. We talk the latest in CBM, mostly DC. I'm trying to mix other things into this conversation, but we got to keep revisiting this Superman box office performance. And I'm just here to kind of give it to y'all straight this week. I got other videos on my Superman channel, other streams that I've talked about this in depth. So we're not going to waste too much time breaking down numbers. The numbers are there. And so before we get into this article, first, before I even talk about Superman, while people are arguing about comic book movies, I'm winning reading comic books. If most people don't know about the upcoming Batman and Deadpool event this fall in the comic books, it's the headline is the Batman Deadpool story. But then there's going to be, so it's a Marvel DC crossover, right? In the comics, in the 90s, there was that huge Marvel vs. DC, then all the spinoffs and the amalgamation universe. I remember that as a child growing up. That's around the time I got into comics. So there was always something pretty cool about Marvel and DC sharing, a page in the comic. And so now, 30 years later, they're doing it again. And it's going to be a huge event. And as a lot of people kind of guessed a few years ago, The Rock talked about this and other people talked. James Gunn talked about Marvel and DC doing live action stuff or even animated stuff together as well. We're still about 5 or 6 years before they start really making something like that. After the, Justice League crossover, then you're going to get the Marvel versus DC crossover, right? So while people are being petty about films, I'm winning reading comic books. Now, this cover here, I bring this cover up because we said Batman, Deadpool. Why is Wolverine on there? Well, they're going to have a lot of special covers, nice mashups of other Marvel and DC characters. This cover is special because, again, I talked about when I started off with comics in the 90s, it was Jim Lee. You got Jim Lee with this cover with Batman and Jim Lee's Wolverine. Amazing. Just an amazing cover. I'm going to buy any cover Jim Lee makes anyway. This is pretty special because, like I said, that reminds me of just growing up reading comics. Was his Wolverine and his Batman as well, too. So interesting stuff. Now let's get back to the petty stuff since people still want to continue that. Now, as far as with James Gunn, and see, this is the first dumb comment of the day. If it's not going to make 670, that means it can't make 700 million. It's kind of like it goes without saying, right? So, yeah, 700 is more than 670. So if it doesn't make 670, yeah, it's not going to make 700. Yeah, it's kind of, yeah. I expect more dumb comments. Now, before we get into the box office, the new article that I'm talking about, one thing we have to remember with this Superman film is that according to Warner Brothers, is already profitable. Again, argue with the wall. You don't like the film and stuff like that. For those that don't like the film, it really doesn't matter at this point. The numbers are in. And there's some people saying, well, the general audience, now they don't like the film. Well, no. When we talk about box office, let me put this back up. The first thing Warner Bros. Wanted to do with this film, and we'll briefly touch on numbers. The general audience is reflected by the Rotten Tomato audience score and the cinema score. So the general audience already said they liked more than disliked the film. And the domestic run shows that was the biggest market for this film. So we can't change the narrative no matter what with this. The general audience already has spoken on this film, right? So that's one thing. And again, it's not saying people can't have other opinions. You can. I go off of results, not feelings. If the numbers said anything differently, that's what I would be here reporting. But these are the numbers, right? And then when we talk about numbers, on the last video, is because it shows people just repeat whatever fits their narrative. It's been this thing saying, oh, F1 is a success. It's doing so great. It's more successful, than Superman or whatever. I don't care what's more successful than the other. That's one thing. But if we're going to say F1 is a success, we see the worldwide numbers there, 590 million. It probably will get to 600. Now people are calling this a success. So we got to keep the same energy. We got to keep the same energy. That's why I say we can't have it both ways here. If we're saying F1 is a success at 590 million, approaching 600 million, then you have to admit Superman was a success as well too. See, I'm just using the numbers that's out there and the narratives that's out there. Because right now, like I said, F1 is a sort of a success story. Superman is more profitable than F1. So if everyone can kind of get on that standing right there, then we can progress this conversation, because revisiting this every stream, I don't plan on doing that. But so, like I said, F1 is a success. So why do we deem this a success? Warner Bros. Put out their numbers around 500 million for this to be profitable for them. How is 500 the number? Well, you had the budget of 225 million to make the film. Now, this is what they publicly put on their budget sheets. 225 million to make the film. 125 million to market the film. This is what they publicly put down. And then you have the marketing tie-ins. That was around 100 million. So it offsets the marketing. That's how you get to the 500 million. And as we see there over the 500 million, this film is profitable. Now to try to angle this any other way, I don't know what else to tell you with this. Again, F1 is a success story, though it may barely break even. It costs about 300 million to make F1, and it doesn't have the marketing tie-in Superman has to offset any costs. So that's why you have F1 may break even, and Superman is already profiting. Jarence, it depends. I go off of different ways, separate ways to determine as far as the budget. They publicly put out their marketing budget. So we are going to count that as costs. But the fact that they have advertising tie-ins, just like Fantastic Four had. Fantastic Four had 170 million offsetting their marketing costs. Fantastic Four is actually going to profit, but people like to argue. Superman didn't have quite as much as Fantastic Four as far as 170 million offsetting. It was around 100 million. The whole point, Superman had to make over 500 million. Some people say 520 to be profitable. It is profitable, and we go forward with the conversation, right? That's what we do. Let's double check in the chat real quick. Let's see what we're saying. Some stuff we have repeated, but it is what it is. Oh yeah, it's a profit. And again, the audience and critical reception is what they wanted to, to repair the DC name. So it's, they're going to have the sequel, but we're going to go to this article that people are talking about. The world is different now. Well, yeah, as far as the Man of Steel 2013 conversation, I mean, we'll revisit this here. The markets are different compared to 2013. But in some areas, this has performed better than Man of Steel. And then in some areas, obviously, China rejected all superhero films. The main thing is they have the markets they feel is successful for this DCU. So there's full steams ahead with Supergirl, and then James Gunn is fast-tracking his sequel. And you're going to get Wonder Woman's introduction maybe in that sequel. We'll see. We'll see about that. But the markets are clear. The Superman saga. That's really what it comes down to. Domestic Man, which I think is fun. That's a funny name. Versus Man of Inflation. You can't make this up, right? That's what we're dealing with online. But in reality, like I said, with the numbers, they profited. It does warrant a follow-up. And so let's get into this article. A lot of people are using for all different agendas with this film, but it is interesting to tie that whole F1 narrative together. Now, the funny thing is that Warner Bros. Distributed both films, so Warner Bros. Is winning. Even got the new film Weapons, which I haven't talked about enough. Warner Bros. Is winning this year. That's what's being lost in all this conversation as well, too. But again, if you're saying F1 is successful, you got to admit that Superman is as well. So let's get through this. both box office in nearing 600 million milestone. We don't need China. A fun box office battle was brewing between Superman and F1. Which big budget tentpole will be the first to cross 600 million in global ticket sales? No matter the order, these milestones are impressive for two films that didn't enter theaters as guaranteed hits. Superman, which has been a bigger draw domestically, Domestic Man, is currently at 595 million after 6 weeks of release, including 340 million in North America. Meanwhile, F1, which has displayed especially impressive stamina in overseas markets, has generated 590 million after 8 weeks, including 407 million internationally. Again, just simple business. It's about the markets. You know, F1 doesn't have the strongest domestic market where you make your most money. We gotta have that as a ground we all got to stand on. You make more money domestically. F1 is making most of its money internationally, meaning, yeah, they're going to get a lesser cut of the film, but the headlines, as I always say, it's all about the headlines. 600 million headline. Most of it international. Okay. F1 is climbing. Yeah, F1 is a success story. Superman's making more. That's the point. that's the simple point. So yes, I did get you. Yeah, I did. Yeah, you said F1 was successful. Now, are you retracting that now? I'm just saying, I gotta get that goalpost moving thing. It's amazing. Over the weekend, Superman added 3.1 million overseas, 8.4 million globally. At this point, this is the line that people parse through, and Superman is unlikely to surpass the haul of the character's last solo outing, 2013's Man of Steel, which flew to 670 million, not adjusted for inflation, or Inflation Man, as some people say. And let's park right there for a second. The race for justice. I mean, we'll see. It's already made more money. Let's see. this is what we talking about, man. F1 is at 590. That's been considered a success. Superman is at 594. So they're both going to end up around 600 million is the point. So there's no we'll see about this. Okay. My point was, you said last video that F1 was a success and Superman was not. And I showed you Superman made more money. That's the point. So, or similar money, and they both will be a success. That's the point. Exactly. So we can move forward now, right? We don't got to. What's understood doesn't need to be explained again. Now the 670. Let's pull back up the markets. Before this film opens, James Gunn Superman, going off of the box office forecast and everything that we covered, I was like, oh yeah, I knew it was going to do good domestically because of the forecast. What I have learned personally in this release cycle is that we can't predict international markets anymore. You can't pencil in 100 million from China or 300 million from China. Maybe even Marvel can't do that anymore. So the international market has changed for a lot of those films 10 years ago. To make $1 billion, you needed China to give you a couple 100 million, or at least 100 million. That's the post-COVID markets that I'm talking about. People misconstrue terms all the time. Post-COVID, international markets are less predictable. That's just the facts. So before this film released, I was like, the forecast is looking good. I think it'll make 700 million. And then China rejected all superhero films this year. And then according to people from the area in UK, they said it definitely was a heat wave and that affected the box office. I'm just going off of the UK locals. They were in my chat saying this, that the heat wave did affect the box office in UK. But as we see the strong markets for this Superman, North America, Mexico, Brazil, and UK took a hit. China rejected it. So that's how you finish less than 670 or 700 million. China likes racing movies more than superhero movies. Yeah, I mean, right now, like I said, they rejected all superhero movies, right? So I didn't expect that. So hey, you got me on that. I couldn't predict China. F1 successful considering Apple planned on the movie being exclusive. Producers sought out for a studio to help release it in theaters. Yeah, and that's a win. It's a win for Apple. Wait till it's going to hit Apple TV, or it may have already have. I don't know. You probably could buy it already on Apple TV. I think that's how they do it too. You got to buy the film. So Apple's making money. Warner Bros. Distributed the film overall, so they're getting their cut from F1. So it's a win-win for everyone with that. But yeah, so that explains why this fell short of 700 million. The international markets, and I showed you the strong markets they have and the markets that it didn't perform in. So going forward, like I said, when I predict box office, or it's all just predictions going off of the formulas, I'm going to lean more towards a domestic number because that's what I can, off the data, I can predict that better than that just is what it is. So it didn't pass Man of Steel. And then again, too, Warner Brothers, they just wanted to make a profit. As James Gunn actually said, he wasn't lying, that he's got to get his budget back. Their number was 500 million, or a little more than 500 million to hit. They've obviously passed that. So they are in the profit for Superman. So the show goes on with the film. The funny thing, because I don't want to belabor this too much, but the funny thing with this is if these numbers were reversed, if you were getting about 200 million domestically, but 300 million internationally, it would be a different temperature in Warner Brothers right now. Because they'd be like, man, international is unpredictable. So we don't know, if those numbers will hold every time. But you can, again, forecast domestically better. So it's actually, if you're going to hit in one market, it's probably best to do it in the best market in the world, which is domestically. So domestic man it is. They're taking that victory lap. Yeah, they've taken that victory lap. I did that video as soon as the opening numbers came in and they saw the forecast. It's like, okay, we're going to profit. So let's celebrate now. Supergirl coming up next summer. Gunn's going to make the Super Family film. The Superman saga continues. So that's where we're at. That is where we're at. Superman made its profit back, but it will claim itself the most profitable superhero movie this year. Again, it's about winning headlines. So I guess they can spin that. But yeah, it's making a profit. Then they can say domestically, this is the most successful Superman film ever. Domestic man. Hey, you take the headlines you get, right? So Man of Steel, it didn't hit Man of Steel, and just frankly, they would have taken it if it could get that international market. They didn't. So going forward, you play to the markets that's successful for you, and that's what this DCU is doing. And they do have to see a little more from Supergirl, and with the Superman saga, they feel that sequel will make even more. So we covered that. So we understand again, it's not going to hit that number, but it is profitable. You spend what you can, and this franchise is going forward. I'm gonna let that breathe for a minute. Let's see where we're at. Man of Steel was a flop. No, Man of Steel was not a flop. They did the follow up of Man of Steel. That was BVS. Yeah, Man of Steel made his money back. So according to people that don't know anything about box office, yeah, Man of Steel, because of the marketing tie-ins as well, Man of Steel definitely made a profit. And they did their follow-up. That was BVS. That made tons of money, but they wanted to course correct. And then we got Justice League, right? So that story's already been written. We'll see how this DCU story goes. All right, so we'll go forward. Okay. As it says here, however, the film's reception represents a positive step forward for DC Studios, which has greatly struggled in recent years to achieve commercial consistency with its various comic book adaptations. Up next for the studio is 2026's Supergirl and Clayface. James Gunn, who directed Superman in addition to running DC, alongside Peter Safran, also recently announced he will tackle a new installment in the Super Family, or the Superman saga, though it's unclear how exactly it will relate to David Cornsweet-led adventure that's currently playing in theaters. So, again, it is the Super Family film next in the Superman saga. They made a profit. They're continuing, because there's way too many narratives out there that's just ignoring, again, just the facts in this. It's looking like we'll get that Brainiac, that sketch out there with Supergirl, Superman, Crypto. You got Brainiac, so that's what it's doing. Man of Steel made his money back at the time, yeah, and it profited. WB did not get Avengers numbers with Man of Steel, so they forced BVS as the next sequel. Yeah, they forced Batman on Zack Snyder, and I love what Zack Snyder did with BVS, and they made tons of money in theaters for BVS and physical media. They re-released BVS in the IMAX format. I bought BVS like 4 or 5 times, so they made money. And so people's like, well, why didn't they continue? They did. But we understand the situation behind the scenes where Zack left the Justice League production because they were just messing with him. And we end up with Justice League. And that effectively killed the DCEU. It makes Snyderverse a Elseworlds. And then we got the Snyder Cut. Can Zack do DC again? Yeah, I believe Zack can do an Elseworld story in the future. I don't think that's dead in the sense. But Justice League effectively made it clear the Snyderverse was not the mainline DC anymore. It was an Elseworlds type thing. And so DC Universe is the best universe for Elseworlds. But yeah, like I said, they made their money, and the show continued until it didn't with that. But now in the present, this is where we're at with the DCU franchise. It speaks more about F1, again, it being Brad Pitt's highest grossing film in his career. Is kind of wild. It's kind of wild. But that's what F1 is. Weapons, currently that film is out as 150 million after 10 days. It costs less than 40 million to make that film. Low budget horror films, it's you just flipping money if it hits. So Warner Brothers just had a remarkable 2025, and it's still a little more time left to get some more money out there with Minecraft, Sinners, Final Destination, Superman, F1, all distributed by Warner Brothers. And Weapons. That's how you win the headlines. Then it's talking about other stuff that we don't want to talk about with that. But we just want to make it clear as far as box office terms. What is success? What is not? And this is why the DCU is continuing. Let's catch up with the chat. This may be a shorter video than I thought. Actually, what I'll do, I'm going to queue up. I keep referring to a video I did on my Superman channel talking about the box office and what was successful, what was not. So I'm going to play a clip from that in just a moment before we head on out of here. Because again, we try to just go off the results. I'm going to queue it up. That's on video. All right. Let's check with the chat real quick before we do that. Yeah, Justice League is what killed that overall. Well, I mean, yeah, you can say it was DC's fault that killed it. Whedon, Sujihara, Emmerich, Hamada, like it was all their faults. I mean, Whedon reshot like half of the film, and his scenes were crap. Everyone saw the Snyder Cut. Yeah, New Line Cinema with these low budget horror films have been amazing money getters. Yeah, Mike DeLuca, Pam Abdi. It was people forget how this year started with Mickey 17 and Alto Nights, I think was that film with De Niro. Both those films bombed out the gate early this spring. And I was reading the article saying, oh, DeLuca and Abdi, they're in trouble. They better pull it together. And they got like 4 or 5 rings in a row. Minecraft, Sinners, Superman, F1, Weapons. They dropped a 4 or 5 Pete on you. Once Warner Brothers Discovery splits next year, because it's going to be basically Warner Brothers and the Discovery is going to be over there with the cable channels. It's going to be back to just Warner Brothers, and all the film studios and streaming is going to be under that. I think DeLuca and Abdi, I think they would be able to keep their jobs because they are launching Warner Brothers animated films with the Cat in the Hat and other things. And again, these low budget films have helped them. And as far as with blockbusters, Minecraft was a complete success. So definitely, I think they've proven that you want them on your side, and you know the relationships they have with people in Hollywood. They're getting good stuff, good films. Sinners was a phenomenon. So yeah, you got to get an extension for Mike and Pam on that. And like I said, Zazev likes the direction DC is going as well. So that is what it is. Let's see. Mickey 17 was boring to me. And so, yeah, so when this splits, it's not about selling anything right now. The main thing with Warner Brothers after they split is, building up even more value. There was a scenario if Superman flopped, that genuinely, like, if it didn't make its money back, because people call flop anything now. Superman made his money back. If it didn't make its money back, then there would have been an interesting conversation of the trust you have in DC Studios, and that DC could have been explored to be sold. But in reality, Superman made his money back, and they're looking forward to this first wave of DCU. So I don't see DC being sold, at this time. It's about making money now, not really selling anything right now. Even the gaming division, they're supposed to sell the gaming division for years, but that's on track as well. They have like different divisions under the gaming company now, WB Games. So they're looking to make money right now. Yeah, the GVK sequel. Yeah. Game of Thrones movie. That would be interesting. Yeah, I mean, Warner Brothers, they really made up a lot of its debt back. I think it was at 50 billion. Now it's at 30 or less than 30 billion. Though in business, I think people understand having debt is actually an asset. I know people aren't ready for that conversation out there, but they have made up a lot of their debt. Nah, Reeves is not bringing his world over to DCU. That's not happening. Interesting stuff with that. We just want to point out this article again. F1 having that success, so is Superman. That is what it is. Yeah, it's about more IP for sure. I want to bring up the video I keep talking about. And because hopefully I don't have to keep revisiting, this whole thing of, the DCU, the state of DCU, what happened in the past. I'm going to, we'll start here. The template. Okay. No, Reeves does have final say. No, Reeves is not crossing over the DCU. I've been told that pretty clearly for a couple years now. He's going to make DCU projects, but Patterson is not crossing over to the Superman saga. Again, as far as what does Zaslav want to see with this DCU reboot, I explain it right here. So let's play this part. That James Gunn and DC Studios, what they're looking at for how they want this film to perform is Batman Begins. A lot of people are using this as an example of. So again, we're talking about what does Superman need to accomplish? Did it have to do as much as Man of Steel? I mean, again, you'll take it if you can get it. But in-house, they were looking at what Batman Begins did 20 years ago. And this is the template that they felt was, success. Again, they had their number. They hit their number. And so this is the template. DC having to regain the trust of the audience. And one of the WBD execs, they came out and said, DC hasn't been doing well, overall, domestically, or, even, internationally either. So it's about winning the trust back. And that was a time back then in 2005 where Batman Begins, where when, Batman, the business was booming when Tim Burton came out with Batman, right? Where you made the money and you had the critical audience score. Batman took over the world when I was young. And Batman Returns came out and he started to kind of trend another way. Then they tried to kind of remix on the fly Batman Forever to sustain the Batman success. Then they felt like they fell off a cliff with Batman and Robin. Notice if you can see, yeah, you should be able to see the numbers. Notice the trend of the domestic number. It's always you follow the domestic number, even with the Tim Burton Batman, where Batman 89 again took over the world. Batman Returns took a hit, and it ticked off McDonald's because they thought Penguin was too scary for Happy Meals back in the day. And so Warner Brothers said, okay, we got to make Batman Forever more, kid friendly. And it made more money than Batman Returns. And then they went kind of too far over the cliff for everyone with Batman and Robin, though I contend Batman and Robin is probably a top 3 Batman film ever. I'm not going to argue about it right now, but it didn't make the domestic numbers. And they felt they killed the brand with Batman and Robin. And so that's when you come with the Batman Begins template. Yeah, Penguin. Yeah, it wasn't a smart choice to make Penguin a weird animal. So this whole run here, I'm explaining why was Batman Begins considered a success? Because after you go through this run and you get to Batman and Robin, see, domestically you're down to 100 million. When Batman Forever made nearly 200 million. Batman 89 made 250 million as far as domestically. Now, some people today, they will look at Batman and Robin numbers saying, well, hey, you made 130 internationally. That's more than domestic. So that's a success, right? We understand. We know what happened with Batman and Robin and how they had to reboot the franchise after that. So this is just another proof that you can't just rely on international box office alone. You do need domestic money to be a success. Music City, I see you in the chat. What's up with you, man? So after Batman and Robin, though I do hold that Batman and Robin is a arguably top 3 Batman entry. But anyway, it's about the results. So after they tapped out Batman domestically, internationally, it was time for a reboot. I think back at that time, people were saying they killed the Batman franchise with Batman and Robin. Totally bottomed out. You had to regain the trust. And I'll talk more about the DCEU in just a moment. But for this example, Batman Begins. You want to win back the trust, you make your budget back. And so again, this is the whole thing with Batman. Batman Begins. And what's the template again? Critical audience success. Definitely make your money back. Definitely on the domestic side, and you take what you get internationally. Batman vs Superman, the highest selling Batman movie. Nolan. Yeah, Dark Knight and Dark Knight Returns. Yeah, no, definitely the best since Dark Knight. That's why, because it made it most of the money. Yeah, I like all those movies all around. So again, the template for the Superman, it had to, again, definitely make his money back. Definitely want that domestic number because that's the number one market for you. And again, you take what you get internationally. And you want to do it domestically first. You don't want to rely on international too much because you're not getting much return from international. There's a great headline. Batman Begins, the budget was 150 million. You got that back domestically, did decent internationally. and you got the critical and audience success. That's the same formula James Gunn Superman is about to do. Now, this is when it's like 20 years in between films. Yeah, you can adjust for inflation and things like that. 10 years, you're kind of like on the borderline. But as far as how James Gunn Superman is going to do, likely is going to do 600 million, which is probably likely what Batman Begins would have done, in today's money. I'm just, kind of spitballing that part. But the point is, this is the template to regain. I was actually right too. I was trying to do the math in my head when I was making this video, but I was actually right. But if you adjust Batman Begins by inflation, it's doing nearly similar to what Superman James Gunn's doing now. Trust of DC. Make your budget back mostly domestic. I'm talking production budget. Do respectfully internationally. Have great critical and audience scores. And then if you got to make more money up for your marketing, you get it back in digital, physical media releases, etc. Because again, you got the good graces of the people. That's literally what Batman Begins did. And then the rest is history, right? Now that's that equity. You get that equity when you get that critical and audience success along with the money. You got to make the money. You do got to get that production budget back. Like I said, right on the top with domestic. And then again, that gives you that equity to get that marketing budget back with physical releases. So that's what Batman Begins did. That's what Superman is on track to do. People that want to understand that, you're welcome to understand that. Those who have some kind of retort, we can discuss that further. All right, so let's get to, because again, that's the template. It's clear. Batman Begins was the template. And that's what it got. Again, the general audience have already spoken, showing the domestic legs of this film. Shout out to Sanov subbing to the channel. Again, on this channel, we go live talking we try to talk the latest in CBM Geek News. Superman's been too much part of the conversation, but I think we can move forward because the numbers are pretty much in. No, it didn't hit Man of Steel numbers. They did hit the number as far as making their money back because of the marketing tie-ins. And so we just move forward with the conversation. With that, we talked the business behind it as well. So latest CBM Geek News, we try to jump in here. Mostly DC, but we talk other stuff. So appreciate you subbing to the channel. So now we see the template again. Batman Begins. Adjusting by inflation is doing exactly what it did, also with the critical and audience score. So this DCU goes further. We keep going back to why did the DCEU end up how it did? It was making money. Why did they reboot the DCEU? It comes up pretty much every video. So this is the video I made about a month ago now. So let me play this part. And again, they made the money they needed to make with this Superman film. So it's going forward. So those that chose not to support it, they're like, okay, well, we're going to go to the markets that supported it. That's what they're doing. Now, again, why did the DCEU fail? Let's play this part. DCEU, and that was making money. So why would they reboot this? You was making more money then, is what some people would say, right? Well, let's start with Man of Steel. Man of Steel, and we got to think of the formula, okay? Because you want to, again, you want a front-loaded domestic number, and you want critical and audience success. You can't remove one or ingredient or mix things around here. This is how box office has been in our lifetime, right? And especially in the immediate time and after COVID as well. But Man of Steel, It cost what? Similarly, $225 million to make this film. And then you had, of course, your marketing. Zack Snyder put in some product placement to offset marketing costs. Cool. Domestically, nearly $300 million. Boom. You made your budget back, right? Because we got to keep this same energy with all the projects. This isn't agenda based, right? Now, back then, pre-COVID, you probably had a China bump. Not a huge China bump, but you got some decent money in China, around 60 million. Again, current blockbusters, Minecraft, Lilo and Stitch, and then blockbusters from last year, only getting like 25 million, 20 million from China. So things have changed with China, and that China bump is not there anymore. So Man of Steel, benefited from that climate internationally. Over 670 million overall. So let's apply again. We're applying this formula. Get your production budget back clearly domestically. And then we can make up the marketing on the back end because Man of Steel, I don't know how many times I bought this film digitally, physical media. Man of Steel was a success. It made its money back. Let's be clear. But again, applying this formula, you want critical and audience success. Didn't quite get the critical success. And the audience was in the middle. You saw the arguments. I saw the arguments instantly on Facebook over this film. But Man of Steel made its production budget back outright, obviously made its marketing back, and profited even more after its release. Man of Steel was a success, though it was shaky on their end because of didn't have the critical and the overwhelming audience. But you go forward with this. So they did go forward with the DCEU, and that's BVS, right? BVS comes out, and I think this has been discussed several times as far as BVS and all the arguments. It got really crazy on Facebook back then. Because again, we got to be clear. We gotta be consistent when I'm presenting this. Is even though Man of Steel did good enough, they weren't winning the headlines like they wanted to. So they were praying BVS will win more headlines while making money at the same time. So didn't quite get that with Man of Steel, but you profited, obviously. BVS comes out. Now, there's been so much talked about as far as the budget, what they spent. I'll just concede. I mean, we'll say, again, the budget, $250 million for BVS. That's what they put on their accounting sheets. And supposedly the marketing was another $250. Some people will argue $300, whatever. I just want to use $250 for the sake of a nice round number. Now we see domestically, you outright got your production budget back. BVS still was a success as far as money wise, because you got that 330 domestic number that covered your production budget right there. You did actually really good internationally. You still had the China bump going on at that time. As we see, it got nearly 100 million from China alone. Though they didn't keep the movie out there as long as it could. I mean, they could have made a couple 100 million in China, but I talked about that back in the day. But that's the number. And then again, internationally, DC seemed pretty healthy. So what went wrong? What went wrong with BVS? Again, you got to take the whole formula. Yes, you want to make money, but you want to win the headlines. And if you're coming off a Man of Steel where you didn't really win the headlines like you wanted, and you felt the audience was split, BVS went even further down that dark tunnel for them, that you definitely didn't get the critical success, and the DC fan base was literally split in half, or really just imploded with BVS while making money. Now, what do we say? If you're not winning the headlines, but you're making money, so you still should go forward with this. All right, you still should go forward, and that's what Warner Brothers did. Now it's been long documented across my platforms how Warner Brothers pushed out Zack Snyder. They was trying to push him out with Jeff Johns and John Berg. They was on set giving Zack Snyder notes, and Zack was attempting to, try to course correct on the fly to kind of give them the film that they want. And his Justice League film was likely going to be that film where things were set straight, where you hit that formula, right? But of course, we understand the tragic passing of his daughter Autumn and the constant fighting with Warner Brothers to course correct on the fly. Because again, all the way up to this point with this formula, as long as you're making money, and even though you're not winning the headlines like you want, you're making money. That's just like Transformers. People seem to forget with Transformers. Yes, they were knocking out of the box. Every film they were coming out with Transformers, it was getting destroyed by critics. And then they started getting destroyed by the audience as well, too. Up to the point where the audience didn't want to take it anymore. And Transformers bombed. Yeah, people forget. 2017, Transformers: The Last Night. This one here, because again, because a lot of people they was under the impression just every time Transformers came out, it just made $1 billion, but it's like, no, like you can keep making these crappy films and you make $1 billion, but then the buck is going to stop one day. And that's what we saw with Transformers right here, where finally the audience was like, nah, I don't care what you're doing internationally, domestically. This is another example. People say, well, only flop. Yeah. This is the numbers up there right here. People's like, well, no, if you're making money internationally, it doesn't matter domestically. No, it matters. Okay. This was a clean flop overall. That's when they were kept getting destroyed by critics, audiences, but they've been making money up. They've been making that production budget outright domestically every time, up until The Last Night, where it finally bombed domestically. Oh, but it did $475 million internationally. They weren't pocketing all that money. It was like, what, 70% they get from that? So that's when I said that backwards. 70% goes to the international theaters. You get a third back domestically. So I misspoke on that one, but you'll get the point. When Transformers bombed, it wasn't critic proof anymore, because people like to throw out there, oh, it's critic proof. It's critic proof. When it starts affecting your audience and the money you're making, it's time to course correct. So you couldn't just roll out a Transformers film and make $1 billion anymore. These IPs can bottom out like that. I'm saying this to say, when we're talking about this formula, you got to make the money, but they want that critical and audience success as well, too. But if you're making the money, then I don't care about the critical audience success, right? So money first. And if you're not blowing the doors off the box office, then at least let's get that critical audience success, but also let's get that production budget back domestically, outright. And that's what the DCEU was doing up to Batman vs. Superman. As divisive as it was, they were trying to correct this on the fly. Then what happened? When Zack left the project, Justice League was born. It comes out. Let's apply the formula to 2017 Justice League. You come out domestically, 229. They spent over $300 million on this film because of the reshoots and stuff. They shot themselves in the foot. So you didn't get your production back outright. And the critics and audience hates Justice League. This was an overall loss. Now, we could talk about how they did this to themselves and things like that. It's just, this is why they should have just rebooted then if that's what they wanted to do. Release a Snyder Cut as an Elseworld and just reboot this mess because you lost the audience. You didn't make your money. Again, internationally, that's still in the days of the China bump, right? So Justice League actually got $100 million from China back then. That's crazy. And that China bump's not there. That's crazy. The Justice League got $100 million. I'm just saying. But like I said, you don't got that China market no more there anymore. We gotta let that sink in. It didn't make its production back domestically because that's where you gotta make your money. You make even less internationally, but you gotta get your production budget back outright domestically. Justice League failed. And that's how DC has been in disarray since then. So the reason why I'm bringing all that up is when you apply this formula and, again, definitely you got to get that production back domestically. And then if you don't outright just blow up like crazy, at least make that production back and win the critic and audience score. And you live to fight another day. Then, again, digital sales, physical media, etc. So with the tracking and everything with James Gunn Superman, they feel like it's already in the bag. Just one thing that I lament over is back then with in 2017 with Zack Snyder and the Justice League film, is if they would have allowed him to just finish the film like the Snyder cut that we have now, and it would have been a shorter cut, right? 214 minutes long instead of 4 hours long, right? If they would have allowed him to do that, I believe, and we see it by the critical and audience reaction of Zack Snyder's Justice League and the streaming success of it as well. Zack Snyder would have made you the money, and he would have got you. He got his critical success. If there's any silver lining to that, he actually gave them the movie that would have fit this formula. So anyway, that whole video is on the Superman channel. But the point I was making with that, because this seems to be something we argue every stream, as far as, again, why is James Gunn Superman considered a success? Is because of the Batman Begins template. And why did they move on from the DCEU? Well, I just chronicled, how it was making money, but they didn't have the critical audience success. They continued till the bottom fell out with Justice. And it's just, it was a total fumble by Warner Brothers back then. But right now they feel they're on some kind of track with this new DCU. So I think that's clear. I don't know. I may link that whole video in the description or something, because I go through all the numbers and stuff like that. So interesting stuff there. Last minute comments or questions, throw it in the chat as we wind this one down. And so hopefully I don't have to revisit certain things anymore in this conversation with the Superman box office. I'm just going to keep it very simple with people. If you consider F1 a success, and it is, you got to admit that Superman actually is a success as well, too. And then, again, we can argue semantics after that. Let's see. Fernando, do you know what is working well in the international audiences, specifically countries where CBMs used to do well? Well, F1. F1's doing good right now. Was not doing well internationally for some reason. As American superheroes internationally, it's just the numbers. We got a whole year of numbers now. Brave New World, Thunderbolts, Fantastic Four, Superman. I mean, that just is what it is. The numbers are not there. Why? We'll see. But as far as this DC and Marvel, for that matter as well, it's going to be interesting to see Avengers next year and China does not support it, or will they come back and support it? That's going to be interesting. but you try to push the markets that do work. And that's, we covered those markets pretty much every stream. And that's what we're doing. Ronnie says you need to have Aaron Fisher as a guest. Yeah, actually, I'm a mutual with Aaron Fisher. And I think like a couple months ago, I was supposed to get him on the channel. Schedules didn't work out, but yeah, I'm sure I'll get him, probably get him on the interview series soon as well. So, but going forward, like I said, when there's interesting CBM news, we'll definitely jump in here and talk about it. I'm ready to move past this summer box office talk. And like I said, I think we're ready to do that. How do you think Highlander would do at the box office? Well, you got Amazon MGM, right? They're making that film. Amazon bought MGM. Around the time Discovery bought Warner Brothers. And they're going to, obviously put Highlander theatrical. They're going to, they got Voltron, where they got Henry Cavill and Voltron as well too. But I think Highlander, made by Chad Stahelski, the guy that made John Wick. There's going to be some interesting action. And actually, I got some production details on that. I may put that out on the video about the storyline for Henry Cavill Highlander. Great cast. They added Dave Bautista. You got Russell Crowe in there. I think this film has a good chance to be a pretty interesting remake. It's not a remake of the original. They got a new twist to the story, but I think it'll do well. I think it can come out and do decent enough in the box office domestically. I have no idea international anymore. But then too, they're going to play it so that it's going to guide you to the Amazon app, Amazon Prime. So the template for that is Ben Affleck's Air, the Air film. You come out, do respectfully in the box office. MGM, Amazon did the same thing. They that's their film with artist equity. So Air came out, did respectful in the box office for like a month. Then they say, hey, come to Amazon Prime and watch Air. They'll do the same thing with Highlander. So it may not make tons of money, but it has to just be respectful in the box office. Interesting stuff. It says Aaron is really determined when it comes to Snyder's vision. Yeah, I mean, I think with Snyder's vision for DC, it's an Elseworld idea since Justice League, right? And I covered that a lot in real time, so we'll definitely see what's going on with that. So, like I said, going forward, we'll pop up when different stories come up and different numbers. But I hope we're ready to move forward with the conversation because I'll let it breathe for a couple of weeks. I'm like, okay, this again. Like I said, F1 is considered a success. So is Superman. The DCU is going forward, and we'll see. We'll just see what it does. That's all we could do. So with that being said, again, make sure you subscribe. Notifications on. We'll pop up when we pop up and pop off. Much love to Syl Nation. We out here.
To Syl Nation. Stay tuned.
Sylabdul ink to speak true as he bring the news. Coffee talk, stay brew, kick back, get real comfortable. Here to stay, no on delay, make sure I be's informed. On the road, on the go, playing ball on that pavement floor. It's the lifestyle right now, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Guaranteed all week's going to always be on time. That's my word, y'all heard from Vino Vega's mouth. What's the worth much more than what these networks talk about?